Yeah, you can just crank concentric and then dump, concentric and then dump. You can do that, and it'll grow you muscle, but missing out on the eccentric phase seems to be you're missing out on some really, really good stuff. Dr. Mike Israel here for Renaissance Periodization, and today's video is all about repetition speed for muscle growth. Now, super quick. If you are new to the channel and you have not yet subscribed, I'm Dr. Mike Israel. I am a professor of sport and exercise science. I'm a competitive bodybuilder. I'm a competitive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappler, and I'm a co-founder of RP and the co-creator of the RP Hypertrophy Training app and the RP Diet Coach Diet app. I'm also a Lamborghini enthusiast. I have 73 Lamborghinis. I'm a man of many butlers. I believe I have 156 butlers, though it's not an exact figure. And this channel here that you're watching is designed to teach you about how to train, how to eat, how to recover, and how to get the body you want with the smallest amount of BS. And for those of you who are already subscribed, first of all, join our members area, folks. I need money. Lamborghinis are unfortunately not free, despite me messaging my congressman about it incessantly. The hell are we talking about? On to the topic. Repetition speed is also known as cadence. We can define cadence in hypertrophy training with a 4-part definition. 1 is how quickly you do the eccentric lowering part of the exercise. 2 is what you do with the bottom pause. Is it a quick reversal or is it slow? Is there a pause? Next is how you handle the concentric, pushing back up. Is it quick? Is it intermediate? Is it really slow? And then lastly is how you handle the top pause. The very top pause, do you just come up and right back down? Do you wait and lock out? Do you take a breath in? How do you handle every single section of that lift? That is a holistic discussion of cadence, in this case specifically for hypertrophy. We've talked about it in strength regards at other times in this channel. Today is just about muscle growth. How quickly should you move the weights? Any of these phases, any of these 4, top, eccentric, bottom, concentric, top again, can be between 0 seconds long-ish, almost instant, and even up to 6 seconds long, which has been vetted in the scientific literature as being generally roughly able to promote hypertrophy. I was cold earlier. I'm not as cold. Ta-da! Oh no, I'm bald. So because we have these giant question marks as to how long should these phases be, we would like ideally to have some rules that can lead to the best outcomes for muscle growth for each one of these phases. So let's take them one at a time. First, the eccentric, the lowering process. In most cases, it seems that some control is better than no control for at least one reason. The eccentric contraction of muscles, the contraction of your muscles as they are being lengthened, is hypertrophic. It promotes muscle growth. So if we just dump the bar on our chest, for example, the muscles aren't very active or active at all during that time. You're kind of missing half of the repetition of growth. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We definitely want to keep some kind of slowing in the eccentric just for the activity by itself. Now, there is good muscle growth to be had just by activating muscle growth in general. But the eccentric phase specifically, that lowering, seems to have a very good hypertrophic yield. It grows muscle. Currently, we can't say it grows any more muscle than the concentric phase, but the best guess is that it grows a little bit more, unit for unit. However, there's another big advantage. When you are concentrically contracting muscles, shortening them against resistance, like the coming up part of the bench, it requires a lot of nervous system stimulus to make that happen, and you get quite a bit of muscle growth out of every single rep. So the nervous system fatigue you generate is here, and the muscle growth you generate is here. For the eccentric phase, it's been shown time and time again that the amount of nervous system activity to lower a weight is some small fraction of the amount it takes to raise the weight. Eccentric muscle contraction seems to occur more at the muscle level and not at the nerve level as much. Your nerves are like, hey, just slowly lower this, and your muscles kind of do the rest of the work, which means they get a really good stimulus, but the nervous system caused and mediated fatigue is lower for eccentric reps. So that's an argument in saying that if you're going to break up every part of a rep into what gives you the best ratio of stimulus to fatigue, just on nervous system tiredness alone, the eccentric phase isn't one you want to skip because potentially the stimulus to fatigue ratio of the eccentric part might be a little bit higher than even we would predict than the concentric, which is kind of sweet. I don't want to say it's free gains, but man, it's like real cheap gains. It's like you go to the airport, you're kind of hungry, and you see a burrito, and normally the burrito costs $15, but there it costs $5. You're like, I mean, I don't want a burrito ideally, but fucking $5 for this thing, normally $15, I'll take one. Just the same way, yeah, you can just crank concentric and then dump, concentric and then dump. You can do that, and it'll grow you muscle, but missing out on the eccentric phase seems to be you're missing out on some really, really good stuff. Lastly, there's an injury management situation. The absolute risk of injury from weight training of any kind is very small. But relatively speaking, if you slowly lower weight, you are much less likely to get hurt than if you rapidly lower the weight, especially if it's not under control. Adding all those things together gets us somewhere to the point of where I can share a best practices idea with you. And that is you should have eccentric control on every single repetition of muscle growth training that should last between roughly 1 and 3 seconds. So you could do 1 second eccentric, which is like down and up, and then down and up. Or you can have as many as 3 seconds in the eccentric. It's 1, 2, 3, and push, and 1, 2, 3, and push. Anything between 1 and 3 seconds generally seems to be like a good answer. Technically speaking, and they've done this in research, you can get near maximum results for muscle growth by going up to as many as 6 seconds just on the eccentric. Let me try that out. 1, 2, 3. Fuck that. I ran out of patience. I can't even do it right here, right now. It's a long time. You can do that and get great gains, but you got to follow 2 rules to make sure you're not getting screwed. 1, you got to get close to failure. If your eccentrics are slow enough, at some point you've done 10 reps and you're like, I guess I'm done, but you got to get close to fail. So let's say it's 10 reps, the 9th concentric needs to look like that, because otherwise, if you slowly lower weight enough, the perceived difficulty of that can be quite extreme. And then it turns out you're like 5 or 6 reps away from failure. You could have been going at the slow rate for longer. You have to use such a light amount of weight that you can always just crank more reps, but you don't because you're like, this is hard enough. But then you're training so far away from failure. And we already know from good research that anything much further than 4 or 5 reps away from failure just doesn't cause a whole lot of muscle growth. We really want to make sure that if you're going to go that slow in the eccentrics, still make sure you're powering up your concentrics enough to detect when failure is close and don't quit any earlier than that. And the second thing you have to consider if you're doing these very long eccentrics is the load on the bar is heavier than roughly your 30 rep max. Because people will say like, okay, 6 second eccentric. Okay, dope. I'm going to do a set of 15 reps. Okay. But for traditional rep maxes, in which the reps are basically done at just a very quick cadence, anytime, 225 bench press test for the NFL, like it's up and down. If you have a 30 rep max with normal cadence, and you take that set and you modify it to instead of 1 second eccentrics, 6 second eccentrics, you have just made every single rep 6 seconds longer. You cannot do your 30 rep max for 30 reps anymore. The real question is how many reps can you do it for? It depends on a few factors, endurance, practice, and really, is it really 6 seconds on the eccentric? What the lift is, which muscle groups. But generally speaking, feel free to cut your shit at least in half, which is to say that with 6 second eccentrics, if you can do 15 reps, that's probably close to your 30 rep max. Here's the kicker. If you do sets of 18, 19, 20 reps with 6 second eccentrics, you're now lifting a weight that is substantially lighter than your traditional 30 rep max, which means it's not heavy enough to as robustly stimulate growth as weights that are heavier. So my recommendation to you is make sure that you know what weight you're using as far as rep max for traditional cadence. So if you're trying to do really slow eccentrics on pull downs, before you put your working weight for a pull down, ask yourself, is this heavier than my 30 rep max with traditional pull down fresh? Just, it's okay. So 120 I've done for 28 reps to failure. Cool. I'm going to click 120 and I'm going to do slow eccentrics, 6 second eccentrics. And I'm going to get, let's say 9 reps, very close to failure. And someone would be like, wait, you just did 9 reps? Couldn't you have done more reps? No. Because to do more reps, I would have to go and pick a weight even lower than my 30 rep max. So sometimes with the very long eccentrics, the good news is that you don't have to do as many reps, because the bad news is if you do a lot of reps and each one takes forever, the weight has to be so small that you're just pissing away a ton of lifting on weights that are not sufficiently heavy to stimulate you. So again, if you do the extremely long eccentrics, make sure you go in heavier so that that total amount of weight you're using is under or is heavier than your 30 rep max. So if your 30 rep max for pull downs is 120 pounds, don't you be using 100 pounds. Yeah, but it's 100 pounds, but like it's a slow eccentric. Like, nope, too light, doesn't cause enough gains. I don't give a shit how slow that eccentric is just not heavy enough. But as long as it's 120 pounds or above in that case, shit, use 160, do sets of 5 with slow eccentrics. A set of 5 with a whole rep takes 7 seconds. That's 35 seconds. That's the typical amount of time it would take you to do 10 or 15 reps. Now you're doing just a few reps. Totally no wrong answers. Just make sure you don't go way too light by saying some magical bullshit about, oh, the eccentrics are taken care of. I'm like, they still need heavy weight. All right. So we figured out the eccentric. Generally, anything between 1 to 3 seconds is good. If you're going to do longer eccentrics, you make sure you use nice and heavy weight. What about the bottom pause? So I'll say one thing. It's not mandatory to pause at the bottom of every lift. It's just not. However, more time in that stretched position, like at the bottom of a bench press where your pecs are tearing off, can increase growth. So if you want to pause at the bottom, it's probably like a lot of upsides just to hang out there for a bit. In addition to that, one of the most high force, now actually the highest force pulse in any lift is almost always going to be that reversal from eccentric to concentric. Bloop, that little bloop at the bottom. That means you're stretching tissues to their maximum with the highest possible forces at the same time. That multiplies out into the highest probability of injury of any point of the lift. You might want to take that into account, and especially if you're bigger and stronger and more advanced, pausing at the bottom is going to be distinctly safer for you than not pausing at the bottom. Is it worth it on the margins? Maybe, maybe not. Just remember that. So more time in the stretch, bottom pause means it's good for that, and bottom pause probably at least on the margins reduces your probability of injury. So what I would say is general advice for best practices for most people. At the very most, do a gentle reversal, not a spastic bounce. You see someone benching like that, they're fucking doing it wrong. I don't give a shit who you are. You're fucking wrong. You're sure as shit not benching for powerlifting because you got to pause in that motherfucker. Anyway, it's part of the rules. You're not benching for hypertrophy, at least not well, because you want a controlled eccentric and then at least a gentle reversal where you come down and there's no pause, but you come back up in a way that's gently reversing. You don't want to do any kind of spastic shit. And if you'd like, you can consider a 1 to 3 second bottom hold at the pause and then a gentle reversal after that. We'll get to, at the end of this lecture, I'll say for who this 1 to 3 second pause really is and for who it might not be as important. But those are the basic rules. So just to reiterate, the bottom pause, not mandatory, but time at the stretch can increase growth, so it might be a good idea. You can decrease the probability of injury, which could be another good idea, sort of like a compelling case. And the best practice is at the very worst to do a very gentle reversal and potentially do a 1 and 3 second pause. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like someone's like, hey, like you want to go on a date with Sally? And you're like, well, do I have to? Like, no. Like you don't have to. Jesus Christ. Like you're a free person. Sally doesn't even know about this, but I think she wants to date you. And then you're like, well, what are the upsides? Like, it's not all upsides, but the bitch has some saying big ass lips and she loves to, you feel me? So we got 2 reasons for you to go. And you're like, oh shit. Well, nah, I'm good. You're like, okay, fine. Go on a date with Kelsey or whatever. That's some other white bitch name. But I'm just saying, Sally got it popping, just like that bottom pause. You think about it. In any case, we did the lowering. We did the pausing. Time for the re-raising, the concentric part. If you want maximum power and athletic development in sport, I just did Scott, did you see what I did with my face? I did an accidental Andrew Tate. All right, ready? Here's my shit Andrew Tate impression. I haven't practiced this at all. What you want to do is make sure that you're always a leader, the best. Why does he do that? Scott, I've never sold prostitutes until it was my career 2 years ago, and then I sold them all. I'm a professional. Anyway, Mr. Andrew Tate, if you're watching this, don't beat me up in real life. In any case, high speed on the concentric, whoosh, is amazing for maximizing power and explosiveness for athletic performance. So if you want to become a great athlete in any other regard, absolutely, you got to rock out. Accelerate your concentrics. Don't pulse off the chest. That could be a little bit increase in injury probability, or whatever chest or whatever curls, whatever squats you're doing, out of the bottom, accelerate. So you start off slow and then you fucking go fast. Whoosh, like that, if you want to improve sport performance. However, that does not seem to confer any advantages for muscle growth. So it does not make you any more jacked. So if you don't have to consider yourself an athlete in another sport, don't worry about it. You can go fast on the way up, but you don't have to. On the other end, an intentionally slow concentric speed where you come down and you're strong enough to do this, but you come down and you're like just trying to milk it out. Outside of reducing injury probability by the teeniest amount, if you have the history of pre-injuring the muscle or something, a slow speed on the concentric has no upsides for hypertrophy. Sure as shit has no upsides to sport performance, and it's kind of annoying to have to pace yourself with. Like, if you already got down to the bottom of the lift, it's easier to just kind of return the bar up at a normal athletic pace. It's annoying to be like, okay, now up. And you're like, yeah, I gotta count the seconds to go back up. So I've got to stop myself from trying. Remember, the slowing of the eccentric means the more you slow it, the harder you're trying. It's an auto-incentive structure. The slowing of the concentric is like, it's actually harder if you go faster. So you have to make it easier on yourself, but there's no benefit. Slowing intentionally the concentric is something that you do very, very rarely, if at all. Mostly with injury stuff. Like, yeah, I would go fast, but my pec will pop off, so I'm just going to go nice and slow on everything. Totally fine. So my best practice advice to you is to do an athletic concentric, but nonetheless a controlled one. Focus on good technique and not necessarily cadence/pacing. So what that means is eccentric control, let's say pause at the bottom and then woof back up. And eccentric control and pause at the bottom and then woof back up. We're not talking about super explosion. We're not talking about super slow. Just athletically return the bar, focusing on the right muscle activations and the right bar path on the way up. That's probably the best way to handle a concentric. So no avowed cadence. They're like, okay. So like, because people will ask, like, will come and train with me and they'll be like, all right, so we're doing 1, 2, 1. And I'm like, the fuck? I don't know Morse code. The fuck are you talking about? And they're like, eccentric, pause, concentric. And I'm like, I don't know how long my concentrics take, and I don't care. I just put the bar back up to where it's supposed to be in an athletic but measured manner. And that's what I would recommend for most people. All right, the top pause, the fucking peak contraction, fellas. Hey, Scott, do you want to come touch my muscle while I contract it?
I'm gonna put my head in there.
Oh my God. Which head? Doesn't matter. Everybody's having fun now. All right. The top pause, the lockout, whichever lift you're doing it, cross the body, fucking one arm tricep extension, the most hardcore movement in bodybuilding, I might add. Turns out there's no direct muscle growth benefit either in research or in theory to doing a top pause. Nothing direct like this for sure works. So, because remember, the bottom pause is more loading at the stretch. That's confirmed by science to be a thing that's fucking good. It's just better. The top pause, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, there are at least 2 things you can get out of a top pause. So normally you don't have to top pause, but there are 2 good reasons to try a top pause in context. And the context isn't universal. So sometimes these things are real. Sometimes like it's not the time for them. First reason, you can rest at the top if the top is a relatively unloaded position. For example, if you curl and your curl ends here, not here. If your curl ends here, are you resting here? Fuck no, it's maximum gravity here. You can't just rest here. So if you're top pausing here, you're just pissing away a lot of energy. But if you're leg pressing, you lock out your legs in a leg press, it actually takes the entire muscle, completely switches it off, and it's just bone on bone, which by the way, your joints are made for. Don't worry, you're not going to die. But now you can actually rest your quadriceps at the top. And if you can rest your quads at the top, what you can do is give them some time to recuperate, a couple of seconds, and then you do another mini set. You hit them again for a few reps. You get tired, you lock out again. You keep doing that. Within one set, you get more approaches to failure. Typically, one set just has one approach to failure. You almost failed and you're done. But with leg presses, maybe with skull crushers on a Smith machine where you can lock out and rest for a second, let the machine take up the slack. You can go, rest at the locked, couple more, go. And then you have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 approaches to failure in one set. Those are mega gains. Again, that's not on every exercise. In addition to that, sometimes pausing at the top can let you renorm your technique. in a way that allows your technique for the other reps to be better. Because typically what happens, especially definitely for beginners, for sure for intermediates, less for advanced, but it happens nonetheless, is as you do more and more reps of a lift, your technique, generally, you get out of position, you degrade. Like if you're benching with proper arch and retraction, at first couple reps, you're doing great, but then your shoulders start to slide forward, you lose your arch, and you're just kind of benching like a normal idiot again. And you're like, God damn it. So sometimes when you have the top pause, you can use it to re-arch, get set into position, and go. So sometimes pausing at the top is good for technique renorming. A really good example of this is if you're doing machine presses. Because sometimes with machine presses, just locking out, letting the machine take the rest of the slack, you got some time there. You're not getting drained of energy then. So you do machine presses, you lose your position, lock out the 8th rep, really pull your shoulders back, chest up, and then you got a couple more really good reps. If you hadn't renormed, the next reps would have been shitty. The SFR isn't that great. You hurt your joints a little more. Your pecs aren't exposed anymore. So the last couple reps, you're like, shit, those sucked. Whereas if you renormed at the top, you could have gotten a couple more reps that were excellent, excellent reps. So definitely an idea about why you might be able to do a top pause and actually get some really good benefit out of it. Another good example is you start to lose your mind-muscle connection situation, let's say with curls. And let's say it's you're curling to the face. So at the top here, it is actually an opportunity to rest. You do some curls, and after a while, you're just kind of moving around. Like, I'm not in touch with my biceps. You go to here, renorm technique, okay, control, and then biceps, 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 biceps. And then the next couple reps, because you took that time at the top to rest a little bit, to remind yourself of what the technique was, your technique is just better. However, if you're pausing at the top of a lift in which there's no unloading of the muscles, it'll continue to sap your energy. So all of the renorming that you're doing directly has to fight against the number of reps you're losing because your energy is leaving you. And the number of reps you're losing is potential growth opportunities. Because the renorming top pause itself doesn't actually grow muscle. It ostensibly sets you up to grow more. But if you piss away all your energy, it's a real stupid idea. It's like stopping to get gasoline while you have a hole in your fucking tank. It just keeps leaching it out. You got the fucking plug in there, you're putting in the gas, and it's just going right out. You got a hole in your gas tank, just go until you can't go anymore. And then maybe, I don't know, if you can't fix the hole. So what's an example of this in real life? You guys ever see people squat? They'll come up for rep number 6, and then they'll try to re-arch, renorm. They go again. Holy fuck, you do that at the top of a squat. You just cost yourself 1, 2, or 3 repetitions from the weight just crushing you the entire time. As soon as you unrack heavy squat and walk out, you're on a fucking clock of how many reps you could have done. You got to get to it. You just got to do those reps. What's another good example of a lift? I was going to say pull-ups. Top pause is the hardest part of the pull-up, so definitely not a good idea to do it in that regard. There's a bunch of other lifts in which dumbbell lunges. You pause at the top of dumbbell lunges, your hands are being fucking opened up by the dumbbells, or if you got versa gripped in, your traps are getting stretched out. You're like, okay, this is a trap workout. Now your back is being rounded. Some exercises are not unloaded and relaxed at the top pause. For them, renorming and top pausing is a really, really bad idea. For them, use the top pause as just a quick opportunity to return back and do another one, right? So, best practice. For most lifts, practice at least a split-second pause until a descent. You come up on the bench, click, and down. Just hit the top and come right back down. No rush. You can pause for a split second and then go back down, but don't hold it at the top for a long time. Unless your technique greatly stabilizes as a result of pausing for a second and reasserting yourself, and that's not a very laborious process so that it doesn't cost you a lot of reps in the back end. So if you're doing something like Maya reps, pausing at the top and resting is totally cool, but again, only works in lifts in which you can lock out and the weight isn't burdening you and you can actually rest at the top pause. So the top pause, make it quick, make it snappy, don't spend too much time there unless you have a compelling reason for renorming your technique that works or doing essentially Maya reps, rest pause sets that actually works for you. What do you get when PhD sports scientists collaborate with pro bodybuilders? The most effective muscle growth training app ever made. Get yours now. Wrapping this all up, something new I'm trying on the channel here. I'm sure this will have its way and it'll suck and you guys will hate me and then I just won't post anymore. That's it. I'll see myself out. Main points for this video. So if you were in a weed-induced stupor this entire time, hey, wake up. We got main points. but we're going to do main points for beginners, for intermediates, and for advanced. In other words, if you're a beginner or intermediate or advanced, what is it that you want to get out of this video? I got it all summed up. Main points for beginners. Move smoothly and slowly through all phases, zero rush, because it's the technique you want to get down, and you're so growth sensitive, you don't need to worry about cadence at all. The path of the bar / weight in your hands / your body is 100 times more important to you as a beginner than cadence. So if I'm looking at you lifting as a beginner, I just randomly walked in the gym and I know you started 2 days ago, or because I follow you on Instagram and in real life and you have nothing to say about it, and I'm usually in a trench coat, you know, the usual. And I watch you do excellent external technique, but your cadence is a little funky, I don't give a shit about it. But if I'm watching you do dog shit technique, but you're like really specific cadence, but your bar path sucks, dude, forget about it. You're doing the wrong shit. So beginners, good technique. Don't worry about cadence. Intermediates, try to slow down your eccentrics, become more aware of them, and keep your concentrics athletic. It's that easy. If you're an intermediate, you come up to me in the gym, be like, can you watch my reps? What do you think I should do? First thing I'll tell you about is bar path technique, how your body looks. But if that looks good and you're like, what do you think of my cadence? I'll be like, yeah, like just as long as you're keeping that eccentric a little slower and you're being athletic on the concentric, that's really all that matters. Like we can nitpick, but then that's advanced. So lastly, advanced folks, what can you get out of this video? First, decide which lifts for you make the most safety sense and stimulus to fatigue ratio sense to implement bottom pauses on, and then start doing those. So maybe it's for lunges for you, maybe it's squats, maybe it's rows, maybe it's whatever. You can use different eccentric speeds as different variations, essentially new lifts. You can have a squat in which you do 1 second eccentric, traditional speed. You can have another squat you do months later, which is a 3 second eccentric. And you can do some bodyweight squatting in which you do 6 second eccentrics. Sorry, that's going to hurt a lot, but is just variation. So there's no right or wrong answer for you anymore. There's a bunch of right answers. Sometimes you choose one. Months later, when that becomes stale, you choose the other. And you should know which lifts for you can be myorept, which is top pause, breathe a little bit, do a couple more reps, top pause, breathe a little bit, or which ones benefit from technique renorming. So you top pause, really arch and retract again and keep going. Know what lifts those are for you, try them and use them until at the very tail end of your advanced career, you know exactly the cadence you're doing on every single lift and why. And then you're truly advanced, and then you get a delivery from the mailman once you become this advanced, and it's a box. And out of this box come puppies, panda bears, and kittens, confetti, cake, and women of sexual reproductive age that are attracted to you. And I'm still waiting for a lot of that in my own life. See you guys next time? Yeah, why not? See you then.